Have you ever seen a little girl take on a billionaire? Little black girl helps billionaire repair her black Bentley. She makes her hear again. Steam rose from the asphalt as the $500,000 black Bentley Molson sat on the side of the highway, its hood open like a hungry mouth. Victoria Sterling, heir to a $16 billion pharmaceutical empire, gestured frantically on the phone, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the platinum cell phone. I don't care if you have to bring the mechanic in by helicopter. I have a board meeting in 2 hours, she shouted, completely unaware that her words were lost in the wind. No one could hear her on the other end of the line, which had been dead for 20 minutes. That's when a 12-year-old girl stopped her rusty bicycle next to the luxury car. Can you believe what happens next? Luna Martinez watched the scene with curious eyes, her hands moving in fluid gestures as she analyzed the problem. Deaf since birth, she had developed a special sensitivity to vibrations and patterns that others would never notice. What do you want, girl? Victoria turned abruptly, her tone laden with irritation and disdain. Can't you see I'm busy here? Luna pointed to the engine and then to her ears, shaking her head. She made a few gestures with her hands, but Victoria just rolled her eyes. Great. Now I have to deal with a deaf mute lost in the middle of nowhere, Victoria muttered. Look, kid, go play somewhere else. This is grown-up stuff. But Luna didn't move. Instead, she approached the engine and placed her hand on the chassis, feeling the vibrations that only she could detect. Her eyes lit up when she identified the irregular pattern, a problem with the cooling system that would take any mechanic hours to diagnose. Luna opened her worn school backpack and pulled out a small toolkit that her grandfather, a retired mechanic, had given her. Victoria watched in disbelief as the girl set to work with surgical precision, her small hands navigating the complex engine as if it were a familiar puzzle. Hey, get your dirty hands off my car, Victoria yelled, trying to pull Luna away. You have no idea how much this costs. But it was too late. Luna had located the problem. A small disconnected hose that was causing the engine to overheat. With a delicate movement, she reconnected it and made a few quick adjustments. The smooth purr of the engine came back to life as if nothing had happened. Victoria was speechless. In 15 minutes, a deaf girl had solved a problem that his elite mechanics couldn't diagnose in less than half a day. How did you? Victoria began, but stopped when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Around Luna's neck, hanging from a simple cord, was a small gold medallion, exactly like the ones her pharmaceutical company had distributed 20 years ago in an experimental program in poor communities. A program Victoria knew very well had been cancelled after unforeseen complications that resulted in permanent hearing loss in dozens of children. Luna smiled innocently and waved, riding away on her bike. But Victoria remained frozen, her face turning pale as she realized that the past she thought she had buried forever had just returned in the form of a 12-year-old girl with a talent impossible to ignore. As Luna rode away, Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. This couldn't be just a coincidence. And if you're wondering how a simple demonstration of mechanical skill was about to uncover one of the biggest corporate scandals in history, stay tuned to Black Voices because this story of justice and shocking revelations is just beginning. 3 days after the encounter on the road, Victoria Sterling couldn't get the image of that medallion out of her head. Sitting in her office on the 52nd floor of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, she nervously leafed through the confidential files of Project Silence, the program her company had conducted 2 decades ago in Hispanic and Black communities under the guise of free preventive vaccinations. Miss Sterling, her assistant entered discreetly. I've located the girl. Luna Martinez, 12 years old, lives with her grandparents in Riverside community about 25 miles from here. Victoria felt her stomach churn. Riverside was exactly where they had tested the experimental compound that, according to internal reports she had read years later, had caused permanent deafness in 73 children. The case had been hushed up with million-dollar settlements and legal threats to the families. I want you to hire private investigators, Victoria ordered, her voice trembling slightly. Find out everything you can about this family, and I want to know how the hell she manages to fix complex machines being disabled. Meanwhile, Luna arrived home after another day at Jefferson High School, where she was one of the few deaf students in regular classes. Her grandparents, Carmen and Roberto Martinez, greeted her with warm smiles, communicating fluently in sign language. "How was your day, my star?" Carmen asked, her hands dancing in the air. "A rich woman came to me at school today," Luna replied, her eyebrows furrowed with concern. "She said she wanted to give me a scholarship to a special school, but something about her made me uncomfortable." Roberto stopped fixing the old radio on the kitchen table. "What did she look like?" "Blonde hair, expensive clothes, drove a huge black car. She said she had heard about my talent with machines." Luna hesitated. She stared at Grandma Carmen's necklace. Roberto's blood ran cold. 20 years ago, when Luna was only 2, men in suits had appeared in his community promising free vaccines against a new strain of flu. 3 months later, dozens of children began to gradually lose their hearing. Doctors insisted it was coincidence and genetic predisposition. Carmen had kept the medallion Luna had been given during the vaccination, a bitter reminder of how they had been deceived. They never imagined that little piece of metal would become the key to connecting the past and the present. "Luna," Roberto said calmly, "did this woman mention the name of her company or school?" "Sterling something. Sterling Academy, I think." Roberto felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Sterling Pharmaceuticals, the name he had memorized after years of trying to find out who had stolen his granddaughter's hearing and that of so many other innocent children. That same night, Victoria gathered a team of 3 private investigators in her office. "I want you to find out everything you can about the Martinez family. Medical history, financial situation, legal connections, and most importantly," she paused, nervously fingering her pearl necklace, "I want to know if they have any specific memories of the medical procedures the girl underwent as a child." "Miss Sterling," one of the investigators asked, "may I ask why a 12-year-old girl poses a threat to a $16 billion corporation?" Victoria stared at him coldly. "Let's just say that certain unusual abilities can be the result of processes we prefer to keep confidential. And if this family starts asking questions about the past, it could be extremely costly for us." What Victoria didn't know was that Roberto Martinez had spent the last 20 years meticulously documenting every aspect of what had happened to the children of Riverside. In a shoebox hidden in the attic, he kept photographs, medical records, statements from other affected families, and most importantly, samples of the compound he had found in discarded vials near the community center where the vaccinations had taken place. While Luna slept peacefully in her room, unaware that her life was about to become a battleground between a billion-dollar corporation desperate to protect its secrets and a family determined to uncover the truth, Roberto opened that box for the first time in years. His hands trembled as he held a faded photo. Luna at age 3, smiling radiantly, still able to hear the song her grandmother sang. It was the last photo of her listening. Each new intimidation tactic from Victoria only fueled something inside Roberto that she couldn't see. A quiet determination forged by 2 decades of pain and injustice. What that privileged executive didn't know was that every attempt to silence the Martinez family was writing her own sentence line by line in a notebook of evidence that grew thicker every day. The next morning, as Luna got ready for school, Roberto made a decision he had been putting off for 2 decades. Discreetly, he dialed a number he had kept in his wallet since the day the medical complications began to appear in the community. Dr. Patricia Morales, corporate injury law, answered with a firm voice on the other end of the line. "Doctor, my name is Roberto Martinez. Do you remember the children from Riverside who lost their hearing 20 years ago?" There was silence on the other end. "Mr. Martinez, I've been waiting for this call for years. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" Patricia Morales was no ordinary lawyer. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, she had become one of the leading experts in corporate medical malpractice after losing her own sister in a botched pharmaceutical experiment. When Roberto arrived at her modest office with a box of evidence, she could barely contain her excitement. "Mr. Martinez, this is pure gold," she said, examining the documents, photographs, and samples he had meticulously collected, especially those samples of the compound. "If we can prove that they contain undeclared neurotoxic elements, Sterling Pharmaceuticals is back." Roberto interrupted, "A woman named Victoria Sterling is harassing my granddaughter. She's offered her a scholarship and is asking questions about our past." Patricia clenched her fists. Victoria Sterling is the heir to the empire. If she's getting personally involved, it's because your granddaughter poses a real threat to them. Meanwhile, in Victoria's office, paranoia was growing by the hour. Her investigators had discovered that Roberto Martinez wasn't just a retired mechanic. He had been a lab technician before moving to Riverside, which explained his ability to preserve evidence in a scientifically valid manner. Miss Sterling, her head of security, reported, "The family is on the move." The grandfather was seen entering the office of a lawyer who specializes in lawsuits against pharmaceutical corporations. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. Patricia Morales. Exactly. The same one who cost us $120 million in settlements 5 years ago. Victoria's arrogance quickly turned to calculated desperation. "I want you to offer the Martinez family $1 million to move out of the state immediately. And if they refuse," she paused, nervously touching the diamond locket around her neck, "make it clear to them that resistance would be inconvenient." At school, Luna was beginning to realize that something was wrong. Classmates mentioned men in suits asking about her in the office. Her special education teacher, Mrs. Thompson, seemed nervous and avoided her gaze. During recess, Luna hid behind the library and sent a text message to her grandfather. "Grandpa, strange people are asking questions about me at school. I'm scared." The reply came immediately. "Come home now. Ask Mrs. Thompson to take you. Don't talk to anyone else." When Luna arrived home, she found her grandparents gathered with a woman she had never seen before. Patricia introduced herself in fluent sign language, which immediately won the girl's trust. "Luna," Patricia explained, "your special abilities are not an accident. They are the result of something that was done to you as a child. Something that also happened to 72 other children." Luna's eyes widened. "That's why I can feel machines. That's why I know exactly where the problem is without even looking." "Exactly. The compound they injected into you affected specific areas of your brain. You lost your hearing, but you gained a sensory processing ability that Sterling Pharmaceuticals considers extremely valuable." Roberto showed Luna the photographs in the box. Dozens of children from the community, all between the ages of 2 and 5, receiving the experimental injections. "They want to study you, my star," Carmen said, her hands shaking as she spoke in sign. "They want to figure out how to replicate what happened to you." Luna was silent for a few moments, processing the information. When she finally reacted, it wasn't with tears or anger, but with a determination that surprised even Patricia. "Then we'll give them exactly what they deserve," Luna said calmly. "If they think they can use me, they'll find out that this failed experiment learned a lot more than they ever imagined." Patricia smiled. The girl had the same spark of intelligent defiance she recognized in herself. "Luna, would you know how to access the security systems of a corporate building if I showed you the electrical blueprints?" Luna's eyes flashed with an intensity that made everyone realize that Sterling Pharmaceuticals had just awakened the wrong kind of enemy. One that had been created by the very experiments they were now trying to hide. That night, while Victoria Sterling slept in her $10 million mansion, protected by state-of-the-art security systems, Luna Martinez studied the architectural plans of the Sterling Pharmaceuticals building that Patricia had obtained through public records. Every circuit, every sensor, every vulnerable point was absorbed by a mind that worked differently and infinitely more dangerously than any security engineer could have predicted. The billionaire executive who had underestimated a deaf girl was about to discover that some lessons are learned in the most expensive way possible. Sterling Pharmaceuticals' annual shareholders meeting was being broadcast live to investors worldwide when Luna Martinez, accompanied by Patricia Morales, quietly entered the crowded auditorium. Victoria Sterling on the main stage proudly presented the company's record results to an audience of 200 people and thousands online. "Our neuroscience division has developed revolutionary treatments that have changed lives around the world," Victoria declared, her voice echoing through the lapel microphone, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break over her head. Luna positioned herself strategically near the auditorium's audiovisual control panel. Her hands, trained to detect vibrations and electrical patterns, slid over the device Patricia had prepared, a transmitter that would connect directly to the company's presentation system. Over the past 20 years, Victoria continued arrogantly, we have invested heavily in ethical and responsible research, always prioritizing the well-being of the communities we serve. It was at that exact moment that Luna activated the device. The giant screens behind Victoria flashed once and suddenly replaced the polished corporate presentation with something very different. Photographs of dozens of Hispanic and Black children receiving injections in makeshift community centers. The audience murmured in confusion as Victoria turned pale at the sight of images she thought she had buried forever. There's a technical problem, she stammered, trying to maintain her composure. Can you fix that right away? But Luna was just getting started. The next file to appear was an internal document dated 2 decades ago, signed by Victoria's own father. Project Silence Low-Income Population Testing Phase. The handwriting was perfectly legible on the high-definition screens. What is this? Shouted a shareholder in the front row, pointing at the document. Project Silence. What the hell does that mean? Victoria desperately tried to find the button to turn off the presentation, but Luna had taken complete control of the system. The next revelation made the entire audience stand up in shock. Audio recordings of executive meetings where voices coldly discussed the acceptable side effects of the experimental compound. 73 cases of permanent hearing loss, echoed Victoria's father's voice through the speakers. We consider this within the acceptable margin for the scientific gains achieved. Turn this off now, Victoria yelled at the technicians, her respectable executive mask completely shattered. This is sabotage. Someone has hacked into our systems. Patricia Morales calmly rose from her seat and walked to the auditorium microphone. I am Patricia Morales, a lawyer specializing in corporate wrongdoing. What you are seeing is not sabotage. It is evidence meticulously collected over 20 years by families who lost their children to this company. The live broadcast cameras focused on Patricia. As she continued, Sterling Pharmaceuticals conducted illegal experiments in poor communities, causing permanent deafness in 73 children, including my client, Luna Martinez, who is here tonight. Victoria frantically scanned the audience until her eyes found Luna, who calmly waved from where she stood. The billionaire executive finally understood the extent of her mistake. She had underestimated not just a deaf girl, but a brilliant mind shaped by the very experiments she was trying to hide. You want to know how we found out about all this? Patricia asked, her voice laden with devastating irony. Luna has enhanced sensory abilities, an unforeseen side effect of the experimental compound you injected her with. She can detect patterns in electronic systems that trained engineers take years to understand. The screen then showed the most damning moment. Security video showing Howard Sterling himself, Victoria's father, ordering the disposal of evidence and threatening families who questioned the procedures. My father has been dead for 5 years, Victoria cried desperately. I didn't know anything about this. Then explain this, Patricia replied as the screen displayed recent emails from Victoria to private investigators. Offer the Martinez family $1 million to move. If they refuse, make them understand that resistance would be inconvenient. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Investors began to stand up and leave, some already on the phone canceling contracts. The live broadcast was being watched by more than 50,000 people, and the comments exploded with outrage. Victoria staggered backward, realizing that in a matter of minutes, she had lost not only her company, but her freedom. Federal agents coordinated in advance by Patricia entered the auditorium with arrest warrants. Victoria Sterling, announced the lead agent. You are under arrest for conspiracy, illegal medical experiments, witness intimidation, and corporate crime cover-up. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, Victoria glanced one last time at Luna, who remained serene as she watched justice finally being served. How did you do it? Victoria whispered as she was led away. Luna didn't need to hear the question to understand. Through sign language, which Patricia translated aloud for everyone to hear, she replied, You taught me that sometimes you have to lose something to gain something greater. I lost my hearing, but I gained the ability to hear injustices that others cannot detect. Sterling Pharmaceutical stock plummeted 80% in real time as the broadcast continued, showing the world that a 12-year-old deaf girl had done what years of official investigations had failed to do, completely expose one of the country's largest pharmaceutical corporations and bring those responsible to justice in an irrefutable and public manner. The empire Victoria had considered unshakable had crumbled in less than an hour, destroyed by the same failed experiment she had tried to silence. 2 years after the spectacular fall of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, Luna Martinez walked through the halls of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with the same serene smile that had defeated a billion-dollar empire. At 14, she was the youngest student ever accepted into the prestigious university's biomedical engineering program. Professor Chun, Luna signaled to her advisor, "I finished the prototype for the hearing aid that automatically adapts to each patient's brain frequencies." Dr. Chun marveled at the device Luna had developed. A revolutionary technology that could restore hearing to millions of people around the world. "Luna, this is extraordinary. You've turned your own experience into a solution for other victims." Ironically, the lab where Luna developed technologies to help deaf people had been funded entirely by assets confiscated from Sterling Pharmaceuticals. The federal government had allocated the company $16 billion to compensate victims and fund ethical medical research. Meanwhile, at Alderson Federal Penitentiary, Victoria Sterling was spending her second year behind bars. The woman who once ruled an empire now shared a 6-foot cell with a roommate who coincidentally had lost her daughter to tainted drugs from another pharmaceutical company. "Sterling visitors," the guard shouted. Victoria slowly walked to the visiting room where she found her former lawyer with a grim expression. "The last properties were auctioned off yesterday," he said coldly. "There's nothing left. Your former shareholders have filed over 300 individual lawsuits against you personally." The woman who had once lived in a $10 million mansion now owned only the clothes she wore in prison and a globally destroyed reputation. Documentaries about the Sterling Pharmaceuticals case were shown at universities as an example of how corporations exploit vulnerable communities. Roberto Martinez became an internationally respected activist, lecturing on the rights of victims of illegal medical experiments. Carmen had opened a community center in Riverside that offered free sign language interpretation services to Hispanic families. All 73 affected families received full compensation, Patricia Morales explained during an interview on the country's most watched news program. "But more importantly, we created legal precedents that will protect other communities from predatory companies." The case had become a global reference in human rights. Luna received invitations to speak at the United Nations about how to transform personal tragedies into tools for social change. During a lecture at Harvard University, Luna surprised the audience by taking a few minutes to talk about Victoria Sterling. "Many people ask me if I feel anger toward the woman who tried to silence us. The truth is that she taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that our greatest strength comes from the moments when others try to make us feel weakest." The audience erupted in applause as Luna continued. "Victoria Sterling thought my deafness made me inferior. She couldn't understand that sometimes you lose something to gain something infinitely more powerful. The ability to hear injustices that others pretend not to hear." That same day, Luna announced the creation of the Martinez Morales Foundation, an organization dedicated to identifying and prosecuting companies that conduct illegal experiments on marginalized communities. The first case was already under investigation, a cosmetics company that tested products on orphanages in Africa. At the end of the lecture, a journalism student asked, "Luna, if you could go back in time and prevent the experiments from happening, would you do it?" Luna thought for a moment before responding, "Of course, I would like to have my hearing back and for no child to have suffered. But if those experiments hadn't happened, Victoria Sterling would still be destroying lives today." Sometimes our deepest scars become our most powerful weapons against injustice. 2 years after fixing a broken Bentley on the side of the road, Luna had fixed something much bigger. An entire system that allowed corporations to exploit the most vulnerable. She learned that some people are born to fix machines, but others are born to fix the world itself. Victoria Sterling tried to silence a deaf girl, but ended up amplifying her voice to the whole world. Luna discovered that true hearing has nothing to do with ears. It has to do with the courage to listen to the silent cries of those who need justice. Have you ever had to turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength? Leave a comment about how you overcame situations where people tried to bring you down. Subscribe to Black Voices for more stories that prove that sometimes the universe puts obstacles in our path, not to stop us, but to teach us exactly what we need to know to change the world.